Jackson Potter is vice president of everyone's favorite union, the Chicago Teachers Union. Under Potter's leadership, CTU helped inaugurate the National May Day Strong Coalition, and he continues to represent CTU at the movement's national coordinating table. In September 2025, May Day Strong organized more than 1,000 events in all 50 states, bringing together the largest, strongest, and most militant Labor Day events in a generation. Much work to build on.
I want to celebrate that yesterday, my union nearly unanimously took the decision that May 1st, 2026 would be a day of civic action, where education will be in the streets with all of our labor, community allies, our students, their families, talking to Ed here about doing some voting rights training. Maybe we can do it Pilsen Books. Tom, I'd invite you, but you need to shut shit down in Texas, so we're going to send you back. But I think what we're seeing is growing movements of resistance, too. They've spread themselves pretty thin, haven't they? So how do we take advantage, grow, and really call out all the atrocities, whether it's in Gaza, Iran, whether it's the attacks on our First Amendment rights at the university level, K-12. I know I was watching a Bears game recently, and my phone's blowing up because there's a commercial during primetime football where myself, Stacey Davis Gates, our president, and Brandon Johnson, our mayor, are being lambasted because we support a corporate head tax. So the richest billionaires and millionaires in the city pay their fair share, right? This is after the big ugly bill that represented the greatest transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top in American history. We're dealing with a plutocracy. But there's a through line, right? The person paying for those commercials was a Democrat, a guy named Michael Sachs, who's the 59th largest AIPAC donor in the country. And he loves to hate anything Brandon Johnson does. So now they're working to undermine the eradication of the subminimum wage that the city council passed earlier. So while they give massive tax breaks to the wealthiest and the corporate elite, they want to undermine, the very little decent pay that has been established for the lowest paid workers. So there's a through line too around, the attacks on universities, the atrocities in Gaza were started under Democratic administrations, right? Tom Homan worked for the Obama regime, administration. This is a regime, that was an administration. I will make distinctions, they're important. So, I think it's high time that we start thinking about what Tom got fired for. Like, what would a socialist imagination say our universities should look like so they're free and fair and accessible to all? How do we fully fund schools and not bombs? How can we guarantee health care and housing for all? And that's, in essence, why we're coming together on May Day. It's a national effort to escalate, a structure test. Will you all commit to no shopping, no work, no school on May Day, here and anywhere in the Chicagoland area or wherever you live and stay? Spread that word, because I think we're borrowing from the Minneapolis example in important ways. They showed what it looks like to have true solidarity in this moment to resist. Didn't they boot ICE out of their city? Didn't they get, Noam fired and Bovino, I don't know if he was fired or just, set out to pasture, but something that was better than what preceded. And that's not enough, because then they went and declared war on Iran. So we need to do things that are more disruptive, things that test our ability to escalate. And think about, how do we protect and defend the remnants of democracy? And then how do we advance them? And this election is not guaranteed. I think there's an obvious threat that they will nationalize elections locally. So what are you willing to do about it? When we asked that question the last couple weeks in mass trainings, everyone says, if there is election interference, we're ready to shut it down. And that's what they did in South Korea, right, in 2024. When a similar situation occurred, a president declared martial law, the union movement leadership was the first arrest warrant they issued, and the general trade union movement then shut down that country in a general strike, and 10 days later, that guy was in jail where he belonged. So I think we know our trajectory, don't we? I think it's pretty clear, and that's why we're working with, Higher Education Labor United, AAUP. I think this May Day will have massive resistance training at universities. We'll, show up in rallies at different campuses. I see my old professor from UIC, Robert Johnston, in the house, so I'm expecting you to help us shut down UIC. Yeah, there you go. The same folks who doxed Tom, by the way, are doxing all the May Day Strong calls. So they have produced all kinds of propaganda talking about how Sarah Nelson is trying to violate federal laws by disrupting airports. Well, maybe we should make good on that promise. Let's bring some clergy to airports. So let's talk more about this when you all have questions.